Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a single raindrop landing on your roof, maybe a leaf, or way up on a high mountain peak. Does it simply disappear?
No.
Or does it actually begin this much grander adventure, connecting with countless others, flowing through paths we don't even see, and ultimately shaping the very world we live in?
Exactly.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into that incredible, often unseen journey of water across our planet.
And our mission for you, our listener, is really to give you a shortcut, a way to understand this entire, pretty intricate network of waterways,
Hmm.
from the tiniest trickles to the vast, powerful ocean and just, well, everything in between. We'll connect the dots, sometimes in surprising ways, making sure you gain some profound knowledge quickly and thoroughly.
That's right. And our sources for this deep dive are just packed with fascinating insights. We'll explore the fundamental physics of how water flows,
Right.
uncover the hidden world right beneath our feet, understand the deep cultural significance in the very names we give water.
Which is fascinating in itself.
It really is. And see how these waterways have quite literally shaped human history and civilization. What's truly captivating is how these seemingly separate parts of water's journey just weave together.
Hmm.
So let's start that journey then with our initial raindrop. You're standing there, maybe in a field, maybe on a mountain. What happens next to that single drop?
Well, that raindrop immediately faces some geophysical forces, whether it quickly becomes surface runoff just flowing over the land,
Okay.
or if it quietly infiltrates the soil, starting its underground journey.
Hmm.
That really depends critically on things like how saturated the soil already is,
Yeah.
vegetation density, even just how hard it's raining.
Right, the intensity. So once that initial runoff begins, how did these chaotic little trickles actually organize themselves into something more substantial? What's the principle there?
It's this constant process of aggregation, really.
Hmm.
On hillsides, those tiny drops gathered, they formed trickles, then rivulets, which grow into creeks. And this is where the concept of watersheds becomes so crucial.
Right.
Every single drop belongs to a basin, a specific area of land that drains into larger and larger streams. It's all connected.
And these small streams, they don't stay small for long, do they? They join up, forming rivers, which just get bigger as more tributaries combine.
Exactly. These rivers are truly the arteries of the planet. They carve valleys, transport huge amounts of sediment, connect mountains to oceans.
Yeah.
Think of the Nile, the Amazon, the Mississippi. These aren't just bodies of water. They are lifelines for civilizations.
Yeah.
Absolutely vital.
And what drives them?
Always gravity. Always. Propelling them from high elevations down towards sea level.
And along this journey, sometimes the water sort of takes a pause. We see this in lakes, ponds, wetlands, these natural basins where water collects.
Mm.
They're vital pauses, aren't they? Acting as storage, creating crucial habitats, regulating flow.
Yeah, and we even mimic this, right? With human-made reservoirs, which serve a similar function for our cities and for farming, holding water back.
Right.
Then, nearing the coast, rivers transform. They become estuaries and deltas, these really crucial zones where the fresh water from the river mixes with the salt water from the sea.
Ah, the mixing zone.
Precisely. Deltas, like the Nile or the Ganges, they deposit incredibly fertile sediments, creating rich agricultural land.
Okay.
Estuaries, meanwhile, they're not just rich ecosystems, they're like biological tightropes. Some species have developed these incredible physiological adaptations to shift between fresh and salt water, sometimes multiple times a day.
Wow.
It's a real testament to life's resilience in these fluctuating sort of nurseries for countless fish, birds, and plants.
So after all these twists and turns, these pauses and accelerations, ultimately almost all surface water flows to the sea.
That's the ultimate destination for most surface water, yes.
Right?
The ocean is Earth's great reservoir. It holds something like 97% of all the planet's water.
Yeah.
Huge. But it's not a dead end. This is crucial. This is also where evaporation renews the whole cycle, sending water vapor back up to the sky to begin again. So the ocean isn't the end of water's journey. It's really the beginning again.
But what about the water we don't see? That's a whole other layer to this, isn't it? Not all precipitation flows on the surface or ends up in a lake or river we can look at. There's this entire hidden world of waterways.
Absolutely a vast hidden world. This is groundwater.
Uh,
It's the water that soaks into the soil, trickles downward through tiny pores and cracks in rocks,
mm-hmm.
and eventually reaches a point, a saturated zone, where basically every space is filled with water. This massive underground reservoir, that's what we call groundwater.
So where does it actually collect? Our sources talk about aquifers.
Yes, aquifers. Think of them as these incredible layers of rock or gravel or sand that essentially hold water like giant underground sponges.
Okay.
And in some really fascinating cases, especially in what we call karst landscapes,
Yeah.
that's unique terrain, where soluble rock like limestone dissolves to create these elaborate underground drainage systems.
Right, like caves.
Exactly. It can form underground rivers and even vast caves filled with water. Eventually, some of this hidden water can resurface naturally, bubbling up in springs, which then feed streams and start their visible journey.
And what's really fascinating here, our sources say, is how slowly groundwater moves.
Oh, incredibly slow sometimes. It can take years, centuries, even millennia for some water to resurface. Some might join a river relatively quickly, sure, but other drops can stay hidden for lifetimes.
Wow.
And this delayed loop, as it's sometimes called, is actually crucial for regulating the whole water cycle. It stores water during floods and then slowly releases it during droughts. It acts as a vital buffer for the entire system.
And the importance of this hidden safety net, it just can't be overstated, can it? For human life, for ecosystems?
Not at all.
Our sources tell us about 2 billion people rely on groundwater as their main drinking source.
That's right. 2 billion.
It supplies around 40% of global irrigation water, and it sustains so many wetlands, rivers, lakes during dry periods. It truly is a hidden safety net for the planet.
But this raises an important question, doesn't it? Given how vital it is, groundwater is incredibly vulnerable.
How so?
Well, overuse is a big one, where we pump water out faster than it can naturally recharge. That leads to aquifer depletion. We see this tragically with the Ogalla Aquifer in the U.S. Great Plains.
Right, I've heard about that.
Pollution is another major threat. Once chemicals or waste get into groundwater, it's extremely hard, sometimes impossible, to clean up.
Oof.
And then there's subsidence. The land literally sinks when aquifers are drained too much. This damages buildings, roads, ecosystems.
Oh.
And the scary part is, unlike rivers you can see getting lower, groundwater's decline is invisible until it's often way too late.
That's a really sobering thought. It makes you realize how much we depend on something so hidden, so vulnerable. But
Yeah.
how did people ever figure out how to find this unseen resource before all the modern science?
Well, for much of history, it was all about really astute observation of nature, plus trial and error, and crucially, cultural knowledge passed down through generations. People would look for clues. Lush vegetation in otherwise dry areas, maybe animal behavior where herds gathered or where certain birds circled. Damp soil, natural springs, low-lying valleys, these were all potential indicators.
So a lot of detective work.
A lot of detective work, exactly. And many ancient wells were just dug by repeated attempts until they struck water. For much of history, wells weren't just technology. They were absolute lifelines, often treated with reverence, sometimes even ritual.
So a blend of observation, persistence, and local wisdom. But now, with modern technology, I imagine that guesswork is largely reduced.
Oh, significantly. Today, wells are placed with much more science and precision. Hydrogeology lets us study rock layers, soil permeability.
Right.
We have tools like ground-penetrating radar, GPR, which can reveal underground structures, geographic information systems, or GIS, combine topography, soil data, aquifer maps, and even remote sensing via satellites can identify soil moisture and hint at potential groundwater presence.
So technology definitely reduces the guesswork, helps find water more sustainably.
It certainly helps locate it more efficiently.
But wells don't magically create water, surely.
No, absolutely not. That's a critical point.
Uh-huh.
Wells don't create water. They simply borrow it. They access it from aquifers.
Right.
It's so important to understand that overpumping can lower the water table, making nearby wells go dry, impacting surface waters too. Sustainable use demands time for groundwater recharge. Without that balance, the aquifer itself can compact, collapse, leading to irreversible damage.
Okay, so we've followed the visible journey, explored the hidden depths. But something else that's fascinating is how we've labeled every little twist and turn of water's path. I mean, if it's all just water, H2O, why do we have so many different names for its various forms?
That's a great question, and it really speaks volumes about our close ancient relationship with water. Just think about small flowing waters.
Right.
We have creeks, brooks, streams, rivulets.
Right.
But the names often reflect local culture and geography too. You might hear brook more in Britain. Creek is common in the U.S. South. And in Scotland, they might say burn.
Interesting. And then we have other specific terms like channels, a waterway between two land masses, like the English Channel. Or straits, those narrow passages connecting two larger bodies of water, like the Strait of Gibraltar. These aren't just descriptive terms, they're incredibly important for navigation, for geopolitics. They define trade routes, even national boundaries.
And that diversity extends to wetlands, too.
Hmm.
You have bayous, those slow-moving, marshy waterways, especially famous in Louisiana.
Right.
Then there are swamps, which are characterized by trees and woody vegetation, versus marshes, dominated by grasses and reeds. These places are biodiversity hotspots, natural water filters,
Hmm.
but tragically often overlooked in their huge ecological importance.
We also have those more complex coastal forms, estuaries, where rivers finally meet the sea.
That crucial mixing zone again.
Lagoons, those shallow waters separated from the ocean by some kind of barrier, like a reef or sandbar.
Hmm.
And the really dramatic fjords, those steep, glacially carved inlets you see in places like Norway or New Zealand.
And what's truly fascinating here is the sheer cultural diversity woven into these names. Bayou, for instance, likely comes from the Choctaw word bayuk, meaning small stream. Fjord comes straight from Old Norse, meaning something like where you travel across or a crossing point. These names tell stories about how different cultures experienced and interacted with their local waterways.
So it's not just about the physical form.
Not just form, but also function and scale.
Mhm.
A stream isn't just a small river. It behaves differently ecologically.
Hmm.
A marsh differs fundamentally from a swamp in its vegetation, its soil type, and that directly impacts the kinds of life it supports and its role in the landscape.
So it's not just poetic license then. These names really capture water's incredible variety and its deep connection to human experience. It makes sense.
Precisely. These names reflect how people live with waterways. You fish in lagoons, you farm along rivers, you trade across straits, you build settlements around bays. The language of water reflects human dependency and, really, our keen observation of the world around us over millennia.
Okay, so all these different waterways with their unique names, their vital roles, they all tend to converge, and their ultimate destination usually is the ocean. But here's a mystery that's puzzled people forever and one I've always wondered about. If rivers and lakes are fresh, why is the ocean so incredibly salty?
It's a great question, and it gets down to some fundamental Earth chemistry. Rain isn't perfectly pure H2O. As it falls to the atmosphere, it dissolves carbon dioxide, forming a weak carbonic acid.
Okay, slightly acidic.
Just slightly.
Yeah.
But as this slightly acidic rain falls on rocks over long periods, it slowly weathers minerals. It breaks down salts and ions, things like sodium, chloride, magnesium, sulfate that are locked in the rocks.
Right.
Rivers then carry these dissolved ions, basically as a very, very dilute salt solution, downstream towards the ocean.
So the rivers are constantly kind of flushing these salts into the ocean. Does that mean it just keeps accumulating over millions, billions of years?
That's precisely it. Think of the ocean as a giant basin with no outlet for the salts. Water evaporates from the ocean surface to continue the water cycle.
Leaving the salt behind.
Exactly. It leaves the salts behind. So over billions of years, this process has concentrated those dissolved minerals, resulting in oceans being about 3.5% salt by weight on average.
Wow. And fresh water. Rivers, lakes.
Now, freshwater found in rivers, lakes, glaciers, groundwater. It also contains dissolved minerals, just in much, much lower concentrations. The constant renewal through precipitation and runoff keeps flushing the system, keeping those salts diluted. That's the key difference. Rivers flow, oceans accumulate.
And then there's that in-between state, brackish water.
Yes, brackish water occurs right where fresh and salt water mix. Prime examples are estuaries, deltas, mangrove swamps. Its salinity isn't fixed. It varies constantly with tides, rainfall, river flow.
A dynamic environment.
Very dynamic. And these unique ecosystems are incredibly rich in biodiversity because the organisms living there have adapted to these constant fluctuations. Think of places like the Chesapeake Bay or the Sundarbans Delta in Bangladesh and India, teeming with life, specifically adapted to that brackish condition.
So why do these distinctions, fresh, salt, brackish, matter so much in the grand scheme of things?
Oh, they matter profoundly for several key reasons. Biologically, most species just cannot handle wide swings in salinity. A typical freshwater fish can't survive in the ocean, and vice versa. There are some exceptions, like salmon, but most life is specialized.
Right.
Culturally and for civilization, fresh water is incredibly scarce. It's only about 3% of Earth's total water, and most of that is locked up in glaciers and ice caps.
So usable fresh water is tiny.
Tiny. Which is exactly why human settlements, cities, agriculture have historically clustered around rivers and lakes, the accessible sources of fresh water.
Makes sense.
And geographically, those brackish estuaries often became cradles of civilization. Think of the Nile Delta, Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates. Their fertility and access to both land and sea resources made them ideal locations.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the sheer scale of the ocean is just mind-boggling, covering, what, 71% of the Earth, holding 97% of the water?
That's right. Our sources aptly describe it as Earth's circulatory system. It regulates climate on a global scale, supports these vast, complex ecosystems, and even generates a huge portion of the oxygen we breathe through phytoplankton.
And this circulatory system, as you said, is fed by every part of the water cycle.
Exactly. Runoff carries soil, nutrients, but also pollutants from land into rivers, and then inevitably to the oceans. Groundwater slowly seeps out along coastlines, feeding coastal waters. Even water vapor that evaporates inland often gets carried by weather systems and rains back directly into the oceans. The ocean is the final collector. Pretty much everything flows downhill eventually.
But this also means the ocean is kind of a mirror reflecting everything happening on land. We hear so much about ocean pollution.
Indeed, and it reflects it quite starkly.
Yeah.
Consider fertilizer runoff from farms.
Mm.
It causes these massive algal blooms, which then die and decompose, consuming oxygen and creating dead zones where marine life can't survive.
Right.
Rivers act like conveyor belts for microplastics, carrying them from cities and industries into the ocean, where they collect in these huge rotating currents called gyres, like the infamous Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Mm-hmm.
Chemicals from industry, heavy metals, oil spills, even untreated sewage. Once these get into the ocean currents spread them globally.
Can the ocean handle it? Does it clean itself?
The ocean does have incredible self-healing powers through dilution, chemical processes, biological activity, and currents dispersing pollutants. But its capacity isn't infinite, and the combination of global warming causing ocean heating and acidification, plus the sheer volume of plastics and chemical pollutants, it's overwhelming the ocean's natural resilience in many areas. There's a quote I remember. The ocean can absorb much, but not everything, and what we put in eventually comes back to us in our food, our storms, and our climate.
That's powerful, and it really underscores the global connection. One ocean, many names. We label them Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, Arctic, but it's all one vast interconnected system, isn't it?
Absolutely. Global currents like the Gulf Stream or the deeper thermohaline circulation, this great conveyor belt, move water, heat, nutrients, and unfortunately pollutants around the entire planet.
So pollution in one region doesn't just stay local.
Definitely not. It spreads. We find microplastics originating from Asia frozen into Arctic ice, for example. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It's quite a thought.
And it brings us back to that beautiful, almost philosophical reflection on salinity. You can say rivers taste of the mountains they run through, but oceans taste of the earth itself. That saltiness is like a memory, isn't it? A memory of every rock ever touched by rain, every mineral dissolved and carried down over eons.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. Now, beyond just moving water itself, what's also fascinating here is how waterways have always moved us and our stuff. Our sources call them humanity's first superhighways.
That's absolutely right. Think about it. Before we had extensive roads, and certainly before railroads or planes, rivers and seas were the only practical way to move people and heavy goods over long distances. Things like timber, grain, stone.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
Exactly. Civilizations didn't just spring up along rivers like the Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates, the Indus, the Yangtze solely for water and farming, although that was crucial. They also flourished there because the rivers provided mobility and trade routes.
So rivers were quite literally lifelines, connecting inland regions to the oceans and then out to broader global networks. You mentioned the Mississippi earlier, connecting the whole American heartland to the Gulf of Mexico and the world.
Precisely. And oceans, far from being barriers, were connectors, highways, to new lands and cultures. Think of the Polynesian navigators exploring the vast Pacific.
Incredible feats.
Viking explorers crossing the North Atlantic, Arab traders mastering the Indian Ocean monsoon routes, European empires built on maritime power, and even today, with all our technology, something like 90% of world trade by volume still moves by ship. Maritime trade remains the absolute backbone of our global economy.
And humans, being resourceful, didn't just use natural waterways. We created our own, too.
We certainly did. Canals are a prime example. Think of the impact of the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal, dramatically shortening global trade routes, reshaping geopolitics overnight.
Game changers.
Absolute game changers. Or think about locks and dams built on rivers to make them navigable further inland, turning them into efficient transport arteries for barges. And let's not forget aqueducts, maybe not for transport of goods, but essential man-made waterways for carrying vital drinking water to cities over vast distances. like the Romans famously did.
And these waterways also carry so much cultural weight, don't they?
Oh, definitely. Rivers often served as natural borders, defining territories, sometimes sources of conflict. Coastal port cities, think of Venice, Alexandria, Singapore, centuries apart became incredible cultural melting pots, hubs of exchange for goods, ideas, languages, people. Maritime traditions shaped the identities of entire nations.
Of course, things shift. Modern times brought changes.
Yes, airplanes largely took over long-distance passenger travel. But for freight, the invention of the standardized container ship in the mid-20th century completely revolutionized the global economy, making shipping cheaper and more efficient than ever before. And inland waterways are still critical today. Barges move enormous amounts of bulk cargo along major rivers like the Rhine and Danube in Europe, the Yangtze in China, the Amazon in South America.
But now, even this ancient system faces new challenges.
It does. Climate change is a major one. Melting Arctic ice is paradoxically opening up potential new northern shipping routes, but at a huge environmental cost. At the same time, severe droughts in other regions are shrinking rivers, sometimes making them too shallow for navigation, disrupting trade and transport that relies on them.
It really shows how interconnected everything is.
It truly does. Waterways don't just carry water, they carry people, they carry stories, languages, goods, empires. You could say that to follow a river is, in many ways, to follow the path of civilization itself.
What an expansive journey we've been on in this deep dive, seriously. From that single solitary raindrop starting its path, to the hidden world of groundwater right beneath our feet, then exploring the rich and varied language we use to name every different form of water.
All those names.
All those names. Then the vastness of the ocean, its salty mysteries, and finally, its enduring role as humanity's oldest highway. It really reinforces that core idea, doesn't it? Precipitation doesn't just fall and vanish. It joins this incredible network, this web of waterways connecting land to sea.
And that's the profound interconnectedness that really shines through here. Our rivers, our lakes, our groundwater, they aren't separate places at all. They're truly just chapters in the same continuous planet-spanning journey. The overarching takeaway has to be all water, everywhere, is connected.
Absolutely. And with that thought in mind, here's something final for you, our listener, to maybe ponder. The path of just one single raindrop depends entirely on which side of a tiny ridge it happens to fall. Understanding waterways means understanding not just the planet, but also ourselves, our history, our dependence, and maybe even our own interconnected journey in the world. So next time you see a puddle or a stream or look out at a mighty river or the ocean, maybe take a moment. Consider the incredible pilgrimage each and every drop of water is on.